This honor I can only accept in the name of all the Mavericks. And don't imagine that this raggle-taggle gypsyo is claiming to be free. It's just that some of the necessities to which I am a slave are different from yours. As a director, for instance, I pay myself out of my acting jobs. I use my own work to subsidize my work. In other words, I'm crazy.
And so I had made in Europe almost $40,000. That was my life savings. And I put all my money, I put $30,000. And then we raised, Jim O'Rourke and I raised the other $30,000 from people, $1,000, $3,000. The biggest investment besides mine was my great uncle, my grandfather's brother, who gave us $10,000. And then, years later, after Animal House, he called me up. He said, "John, you're rich now. Give me my $10,000 back."
A couple of weeks ago, a film of mine, which I've been trying to sell for distribution in America for a year and a half.
Is this film called Fake?
It's called Fake, opened in Paris in 4 theaters. They are standing in the rain for blocks outside all 4 theaters. I don't go there because they love me. They don't, but they buy tickets. I get work. I'm like a cherry picker. I go where the crop is.
I had always been unpopular. And when I was going through public talk about my life, my private life, all it did, those people that had never liked me reconfirmed it. They said, "I always knew he was a terrible little cockroach," you know, and this proves it.
Nothing is so terrible as a pretentious movie. I mean, a movie that aspires for something really terrific and doesn't pull it off is shit, it's scum. And everyone will walk on it as such. And that's why poor filmmakers, in a way, that's their greatest horror, is to be pretentious.
And we made Schlock. We shot it in 11 days. And I met, my original idea, Schlock's a terrible movie, but there's some funny things in it, and it's charming, but it's very silly.
Were expectations assigned to you that you could not live
No,
up to?
the big expectations were that Kane would be a flop. The articles in the trade papers every week were that I was about to be thrown out for incompetence. And the misery on the part of that division we've been speaking about was that it turned out all right.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of filmmakers that work out of the New York, LA mainstream, the regional filmmakers like Romero in Pittsburgh. Renaissance Pictures, your production company, is working out of Detroit. What are the advantages of regional filmmaking?
Well, for us in Detroit, it was certainly possible. I don't know, I can't say easier because it's the only place I've done it, but it was possible for us to raise money out of the city. And possibly it is an advantage to live there because when we went to people knocking on doors and showing them a short version of the film we intended to make for money, they were still struck by the novelty of the thing, not having lived in a film production town. So it could have been a great advantage, the fact that we were asking for this money in a place that they don't make films. We were able to get it, certainly. So,
how important is it that a film should make money?
It's quite important. I'm tempted to say vitally important. For me, it's extremely important because I have my own company and it's privately held. My company is not a publicly held company, so if I'm to continue in business and continue making films, my pictures must make money so that I can come back to make another one. If you're making a film for a large corporation, the need to make money is possibly a little bit less. And I envy, to a large extent, the European filmmakers who are able to work with government subsidies where the need to make money is not important at all. The government recognizes films as an art form and is willing to subsidize them, something the American government has never done.
Do you feel that sometimes you're putting on a different hat to address a comedy than to address another sort of way of approaching things?
It's a hat that I most naturally wear. To do something serious that's got some quality to it,
is hard for me, and I've really got to work. You know, I don't have Tennessee Williams' gift. You know, I can
When
make
you say
jokes.
you have to work, what does that mean?
It doesn't come quite as naturally to me. I've got to, you know, I can feel myself sweating, and consequently, I think I make the audience less comfortable with it. You know, and I maybe every now and then, if I keep doing one every once in a while, maybe I'll improve. Maybe I'll get more facile with it, more confident with it, but it's harder work for me.
Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Elaborate on that.
No, I won't.
The world is full of fucking why, man. You tell people something, they'll tell you why. Throw a rock and you'll hit somebody with why. Like, hey man, I want to make a movie. Why? Why do you think you could do that? Why? Why? Nobody else is doing it. Why are you doing it? There's so much fucking why. You go out and you find why not. You surround yourself with why not. People are just like, why not? Where you're like, hey man, I'm going to try something. Like, all right, why not? Let's give it a shot. People who try to help you do your dreams, make your dreams come true and shit, and you do the same for fucking them. We're all in this together, and it costs nothing to encourage a fucking artist. That's why I get up here for almost 20 years now after the movie, man. There ain't a lot of filmmakers get up after the movie and spend more time than the movie itself talking. But I've been trying to impart one simple lesson for nearly 20 fucking years. Anybody can do this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't born into a business or the film business or born with a mic in my hands. I have no fucking discernible talent whatsoever, man. I have no connections to the business. We're from fucking New Jersey and stuff. I got lucky. Somebody picked up the movie and boom, I was off and running. And part of that manifest, when you're brought into the indie film community, part of your job, part of your honor, part of your privilege is to make sure that keeps going, to encourage other people. You know, to tell people it's worth the shot. Just like Wayne Gretzky said, like, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. It's always worth the fucking shot. Now, if you're talking about, like, if what your shot is you're like, I've always wanted to kill 12 children, Kevin, don't take that shot at all. I'm not talking about that. You know, I'm talking about artsy shit. You know, writing a blog, fucking making some music, making a movie, making a fucking cupcake store, fucking a knitting store, fucking putting together a YouTube clip, just anything that's just not fucking, oh, we must do this because it's part of my job or this will get money. Some shit you just do just to see if it could be done. Live a why not life, man, because we're all gonna die fucking screaming. So make sure when you die screaming, you're totally fulfilled. You're like, I took all the shots. I did it. I went after everything I wanted to, or at least tried. Take the shot. The shot is always fucking worth taking. Whether it's a dopey thing like fucking podcasting or writing a book or fucking writing a blog, think about the encouragement you get. When you encourage an artist, think about the potential that comes out of it. You tell a dude, good job, man. That person maybe one day writes that blog that you meme out to the entire world because it says exactly what you always wanted to say but couldn't yourself. Or they write that fucking song that you play over and over after a loved one fucking dies because it means the world to you. They make that fucking movie that is the one you cling to when everything is going wrong in life. Oh, you pop that in and fucking things aren't bad for 2 hours. All that comes from encouraging an artist. Nothing good comes from discouraging an artist. So for fucking 20 years, I keep coming up here and going, go out and do it. Why the fuck aren't you doing this? It's so fun. You should fucking do it. Take your fucking shot. I took my shot and it's nothing but pussy and donuts, you know, just...
I used to paint, and I was living in New York, and it was the mid-'70s, and just sort of looking for other mediums to use, and stumbled on film, really, kind of backed into it, and started making these short films, and that was the end of painting. It's a very seductive medium. And then the films got longer.
Okay. Weren't you in some kind of, like, I don't know, performance art group or some kind of art group that...
I was working with a group called Art and Language, and we weren't using film at the time, really, but it sort of promoted a shift from painting to writing. Their form of artwork is really, has a lot to do with language and analysis of how art functions in a society. It's very analytical. Terrific group of people. Now they live in England, and that kind of enabled me to explore other avenues, and that from that they moved from New York to England. At that point I started making films, so it had a lot to do with the kind of making changes.
It's funny, you know, I've been so focused on writing and directing for the last 5 years, and writing for me is the part of the process I love the most. Like, I'd actually be happy to write, you know, for other directors and not direct for long periods of time, but I do love making films myself. I love writing, and that's been my focus. So I've really neglected acting for 5 years, and I think just now I'm beginning to think about it again as something that I'd be really interested in trying, but I think I will wait until, like, I'm going to do one film this year with Wim Wenders, who's a director I've worked with before and who I love, but I think in terms of really kind of re-entering acting, I really need to shake things up for myself, and I really need to kind of mix my process up, because I just felt like I really hit a wall and was just kind of giving the same performance over and over and really getting safe and relying on a certain number of tricks that I knew I could be competent at. And so I really feel like if I'm going to act again, I need to know I can give performances I haven't given. And
how about writing them for yourself?
You know, it's funny, I've always like really resisted that, the idea of acting in something I directed, because I just feel like, how would I ever cope with that? But I think if it was on a small enough scale, that might be a really interesting
Ben
thing to
Affleck
try.
has never done better acting than he does when he directs himself.
That's true. Yeah.
Because part of it is writing it, right?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah, I'm toying with a few things right now. I think it might be some time, and I want to be a stronger director before I do that. But I feel like I would. I do feel like at some point I would love to re-enter acting and just kind of throughout the whole process. I'd also love to work with a really strong director who could really help push me, you know, in a direction that I hadn't gone before. I'm not 100% sure if I was doing it on my own, if I would challenge myself enough. So
I mean, I wonder, you've got to be writing your screenplays and thinking, this is who I want for this character.
I'm not usually that way. I usually don't think about an actor when I'm writing. Try to be truthful to the character, and then you know, I work with a really great casting director who always sort of blows my mind when the suggestions she comes up with are just so, you know, clever and inspired.
In the editing of the film, for me, you know, you start off with very great ambitions. You want to make Citizen Kane, and then you shoot the film, and when you get into the editing room, you realize that you've screwed up so irredeemably that you just will edit the film in any configuration to avoid embarrassment. So you put the beginning at the end, you take the middle out, you change things. The editing process becomes the floundering of a drowning man. And that's been it for me from the start of my career, from the first movie I ever did, Take the Money and Run. It was a fight for survival in the editing room. It's not simply that you go, not for me, that you go in there and you've got various themes and you're going to edit the thing like it's Potemkin or something. It doesn't work that way. For me, I'm just in there selling out left and right. The last ounce of integrity I have, editing to survive.
To me, editing is what filmmaking is really all about, because it's the one time you get a chance to create something out of material and actually deal directly with an audience. All the other times you're sort of generating material or supplies. It's like making a film is like buying lumber or cutting down trees and making wood out of it, where editing is like actually constructing a house. I mean, you actually can see it, you can see what you're doing and deal with it. Everybody says, you know, well, the script doesn't work, but we'll fix it later. And they said, well, we're shooting this, but it isn't really working, but we'll fix it in the editing. Well, the editing is where it's got to be fixed. If it doesn't work there, the movie doesn't work.
Dialogue is one great thing for you. Mm-hmm. Some sense of, you have always liked a camera in motion, too.
Yeah.
That goes around.
Right, yeah.
You like, what else? Tell me what are the elements for you that you want to see in your films, because they represent a Tarantino signature.
Well,
music is another.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. But like, I guess when it comes to the actual writing of the piece, where it really becomes what it's going to become, is it's about character, and the dialogue just comes out of the character. And I don't lead the characters. I let the characters lead me, both as far as who they are and the conversations and even the scenario itself. I mean, like, for instance, if I've got a character here with this glass and I have every intention of getting him to where that glass is, well, that's a good idea on my part, I think.
Yeah.
But once I get them going there, they might reject the glass.
Right.
And they go somewhere else. And they are the ones that know best.
Yeah, thank you. I would never, Mrs. Loud, I would never want to remake someone else's film and try to replicate what they did, but when I saw the Don Siegel film, I thought it was such a curious story, and it stayed in my mind, and I thought about how differently I would have approached that story, and it's because it's about a group of women isolated during the Civil War time, and a enemy soldier comes in, and it's what happens. I thought, oh, I would love to see this story from the female character's point of view, and this group of women that's from, little young girls to adult women, and all at different stages, and how they interact, and very cut off from the world. So I just thought about how I would approach that story in a different way, and I thought it could be a different movie. And I found the book, which was like a pulpy 60s out of print book, and I tried to forget the film and just approach the material as if how would I adapt this story in my own way, and the way that I've done with other books, where I took what was interesting to me and then also filled it in with experiences from my life, and just tried to approach it in a new way.
Actors, they can get to a place, they're filled with, wonder and imagination, and they get it so quick, no matter how strange a thing is. They get it, and their talent is to make it real. They get it, and their talent is to make it real from a deep place. And when that happens, it's really, really beautiful. And so everybody, got there in a really beautiful way. I talk, there's no rule or way. There's just, wherever you start, it's a process sort of talking, and then trying it, and then talking some more, and then trying it, and it just gets closer and closer. And the things that you say in between the trying, in between the rehearsing, they might be, stupid things. But between me and the actor, they're not stupid. And they're just little keys that, put it, closer to being correct. And then when it feels correct, we both know it. It's like it needed to go from wherever it was, and then bang, it's there.
I mean, look, I actually believe very much so that if you could make anybody comfortable enough when they're going to perform, that anybody could be a really good actor. It really is, can you make them comfortable? If you could make if you could make anybody, your uncle Ernie, if you could make him comfortable enough on camera, he would give a good performance. Exactly. It's all about comfort.
Exactly.
Well, I went into college not knowing what I wanted to do, and I was at a liberal arts school, and so I thought, having been a public school kid from Brooklyn, where the education was mixed, to say the least, and I thought I should study, the great classics and stuff, and I started to work on them, and no matter how hard I worked, I was sort of a B- student. And my roommate, just by random chance, happened to be an animator, and he was drawing. So he would end the year with a movie, and I would end the year with a bunch of papers with B- on them. So when I was a sophomore, I decided to take a drawing class, and that drawing class kind of changed. It was a great teacher named Will Ryman, and he kind of changed the way I looked at the world. He was just a great teacher and taught all about how to perceive the third dimension and understand it two-dimensionally so you could represent it on paper. And so that kind of started the path. But when I realized that, you know, there was a lot to learn in this world and stuff I'd never been exposed to, and then when I was a junior, I applied to. There was only a few slots to get into the filmmaking class, and I also applied for the sculpture class, and I didn't know which I wanted to do. I just knew I loved sculpture and I loved filmmaking, and I didn't get into the sculpture class. I got into the filmmaking class, and that's sort of the path that happened. So I wasn't one of those people that was that like destiny called me. I definitely was at a law center in college, and it took a while for me to figure out what I wanted to do.
The only job I could get, because Hollywood was a very tough place to get a job in those days, was as a messenger at Fox. Started as a messenger, worked my way up to a story analyst, and then really just wanted to go to Europe, and I'd had some time on the GI Bill, so I went to Oxford on the GI Bill, traveled around Europe, came back, got a job as a literary agent, and wrote and sold my own script. And I offered to work for the producer for nothing as associate producer, to learn and to get the credit. So when the picture was over, I was able to say I was a writer-producer. I raised $12,000, partially from my sale of the script and partially from guys I'd gone to school with, and made Monster from the Ocean Floor for $12,000 plus a little money in deferments, and I never looked back.
Yeah, I think as a director, you have to persevere and have that kind of persistence, and people have to say no to you 100 times, and you can't give up, and that's part of, I think, being a director. It also makes it fun too when someone says no. It makes you, I'm going to get it.
So what is it about, and what is the attitude? I mean, the mindset. This magazine draws this thing, and it's sort of silly, but I mean, it shows all these people that are in your orbit. They include Kate Moss. It includes Anderson, Wes Anderson. It includes, obviously, your Spike. It includes a range of people that are almost like extensions of they're friends, but extensions of some kind of loose-knit family.
Well, I think, most people in film business, you like to work with the same people that you work well with, and I like to work with my friends because you spend so much time working that, my music supervisor is a friend of mine, Brian Reitzel, and I love working with him. We have things in common. I just done a video with Kate Moss for the White Stripes, so that's why she's in the web. They've pictured there, but
this video, what was she doing in the video?
She was doing a pole dance.
And how was it to get Kate Moss to do a pole dance?
She was very game. I just asked her, and she was up for it. She liked the White Stripes and the song, and she was a very good sport because it wasn't easy.
When the film was finished, then you then took it to an agent named Urban Shapiro,
right?
Who has quite a long track record in the business. What was that like talking to Shapiro?
An incredible experience. He, in my opinion, he's the smartest man in the business, really. He's been in it the longest that I can think of anyone being in the thing. He got his start in the business doing publicity for Eisenstein's Potemkin. That's how long he's been working in films. And it was really a great honor to be able to be with him and work with him, to see how he works and try and tap into all his knowledge. He's really got an incredible history behind him. And he's really got a very good sense of humor. So that really helps when you're doing something as serious as trying to sell your first film.
Well, we'll look, just for instance, one of the most talented filmmakers of, my generation is David Fincher.
Right.
All right. But he's not in the same category as me because I'm a writer-director, and that makes it different. That makes it a different thing. And I think one of the things is, one of the things that I really don't, that I've been focused on is there's a lot of writer-directors that come out, and they write and direct one movie, a second movie, a third movie. Well, there's a real voice there. There's a real voice. But you know what? It's hard work to go to that blank piece of paper and start from square one. Start from scratch every single solitary time. You are at the bottom of Mount Everest every single solitary time, and everything you've done before not only does not help you, it could even hang over your head. And that is a tough road to hoe, and you make less movies that way. And it's a lot easier to go and look at the scripts that are out there and available, and you can maybe work with a writer or do a little rewrite or do that kind of thing, and you get more movies made. But, you know, cut to 6 years down the line, and where's that voice? It's gone away. And I'm proud of the fact that, with the exception of Jackie, I mean, I love Jackie Brown, but I don't really have any intention of doing any more novel things. Never say never, but I don't.
No, nobody. You're not going to adopt anybody else's novel.
No, I mean, I don't see that happening right now. Because to me, the glory in what I do is the fact that it starts with a blank piece of paper. You look at something like Inglourious Basterds, and that did not, if my mother never met my father, that would not exist in any way, shape, or form. If my mother hadn't met my father, there would be no Inglourious Basterds in any way. It started off with a pen and a piece of paper, and now I have a movie.
Say, if you weren't born, there would be no Inglourious Basterds, because only you could create it. Although there was a movie of that title.
Yeah, but that is
made
just the
by
title.
some Italian.
Yeah, it was a fun movie, though. It's a fun movie, but it's not a remake.
It was made in when, in the 30s?
No, 1978.
Yeah. Had to be the.
And then I changed the spelling of it, too. Even more of a distance. It's just an artistic stroke. You know, to actually put it under the microscope.
To have us ask questions about it.
Yeah, well, just to describe it means I might as well not have done it, you know?
The bottom line is, what we do is we tell stories. And, you know, if you want to be a filmmaker, the best thing you can bring to, you know, the world is your own story. And there's something that's very personal to you and something that you have your own singular connection to, that if it really is important to you, there are people all over the planet that will relate to it. So the mistakes happen when you try to figure out what everyone likes, because the only thing you can be sure of is what you like. And the reality is what you like ends up being what a lot of people like, because we're all going through a very similar journey. And that's the magic of film. I mean, you know, one of my favorite films is Totoro, which is this Japanese animated film about a 7-year-old Japanese girl. And the fact that I can go on a journey with this girl and emotionally feel her entire ride is the magic of filmmaking. And so if you understand how a person works within a story, then that's the story you need to tell.
If I were talking to a young filmmaker who had started and was interested in how his career was going to progress, how he would guide his career, I would say the number one rule is to do your best on every project. When I started, I knew we were all doing essentially low-budget B pictures. Now, if you were brilliant, you may jump to a major film on your first try or your second try, but normally you do a number of films and work up. Assuming you're on that path, I would say turn down the absolute losers. Don't get involved in anything that you know is going to be bad. But if it has any chance, do the film and do it the best you can. The guys I knew who would take a low-budget film and say, well, it's just a cheap film, I'm going to knock it off and get the money, those guys are out of the business today. The ones who took a low-budget film that seemed to have limited potential, but who said, I will make the best film on this subject I possibly can, those are the ones who have built their careers.
Because the film I just finished now, I shot the entire film from start to finish. I edited and looked at it and didn't like it, and shot the entire film again from start to finish. I threw out everything, the whole thing. I didn't save a single frame from the original, and I shot the whole thing again and made many changes, and went back and did supplementary reshooting and all that, and it still is a very modest budget film with all of that. And it's not necessarily a wonderful film either. It's just that in order to get it to survive at all, I had to do an awful lot of work on it. But if you stay within a limited budget, nobody bothers you.
The trick is, and it sounds facetious sometimes, but it's not, you hire great people, great actors and actresses, and then you get out of their way. You don't play the director. You don't hover over them. You let them change your lines, you let them make up their own contributions and do things, because the people that I've worked with have had careers and are famous and are great before they met me, and they're great in my movies, and they're great after they leave me. So nothing special is happening. If you just hire wonderful people, that's all you have to do, and just don't mess them up, don't ruin them. And, you know, it's really a very simple thing. Then you get credit for directing them, and everybody says, well, you did such a great job. But it isn't, you're just not screwing them up, that's all.
There's been a certain amount of criticism of the trends of American influence on things like horror comics, and indeed on the films. Do you feel that there's anything really, when you get down to it, in the suggestion that American influence is towards a spread of juvenile delinquency through the world?
I don't think that horror films or horror comics contribute to juvenile delinquency. I think that they may encourage psychotics and homicidal and other dangerous types. But juvenile delinquency is, I think, a symptom of the illness of our age. It doesn't come from lack of playgrounds or bad comic books, but of a great longing for youth to have something to rebel against.
You wouldn't say that children are imitative, and that they tend to imitate what they see or read?
If they were, they would have come from the bear pits and the Globe Theatre and committed some rather extraordinary acts in the Elizabethan days, you know.
You don't think that the glorification of violence, which is shown even in some of the westerns, gives them ideas? It would make them think they like to shoot from the hip, or...
Well, you see, I think
I
think that all vital periods of the drama and of literature are periods of great violence, and that all of our great plays and novels are violent. And I don't like them when they are poor novels, or when they are not works of art. They become shoddy and seem to be pandering.
Yes, but
to
usually
something wicked, you know.
Virtue triumphs, whereas in the horror comics it doesn't.
Doesn't it?
I don't think so, no.
No, not always.
Well, it doesn't in Edgar Allan Poe either, you know.
I'm a big fan of action and violence in cinema. I always said that it was almost as if it was one of the reasons Thomas Edison invented the camera, was to film violence, right? Because it's so good. And the genres that I'm attracted to tend to be genres that deal freely in that kind of stuff. And that has to be done well, because if you don't do it well, then it actually has no effect. What I'm about is playing the audience. Like, I feel like I'm the orchestra conductor, and the audience's reaction are my orchestra. And the sounds you make are my instruments, and your feelings are my instruments. And so it's like, I want to, so it's like, laugh, laugh, laugh. Stop laughing. Stop laughing. Okay, now be horrified. Be horrified. This is horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible, horrible, horrible. Laugh. And that's what I want to do. That's what I get off doing. And to me, when someone does that to me, I've had a good time at the movies.
But by getting that reaction, okay, I may be being far too heavy about this here, but is there a sense in which some of your violence I find really difficult to watch? I mean, you see a lot of violence in cinema, but even just going back to Reservoir Dogs, you know, man bleeding in the back of a cab, or whatever it is, really unsettling. There are bits in Inglourious Basterds, really unsettling. Is that because you never want people to forget the capacity, if you like, for humans to harm one another?
No, I think you're arguing too heavy with it, as far as I'm concerned. You know?
It's the same feeling I get going to work every morning as the feeling I got going to school every day. Being a bit of an outsider and not being normal and not quite getting good grades and not being able to compete, and my tummy is spilkus, my mom would call it. You know, I'd have before school every day, and I feel that when I make movies too.
But you're better at this than you were in school.
Oh, damn straight.
I mean, are there things that you wanted to do, but you were just too held back because of test audiences, executive decisions, things like that?
Have there been any? Well, when I was working on Mallrats, there were notes that I didn't like, and actually, since it was my second movie, I wound up taking them. I didn't find the diplomatic way around avoiding the notes. I just bought into it. For example, there was a scene in Mallrats where Jay and Silent Bob and Brody and T.S. are in the food court talking about scars they've gotten from going down on girls. And when I handed in the script, they were like, this will not be funny. No audience will find this funny. It's too racy, it's too offensive. This doesn't belong in a movie. And I was like, all right, and I pulled it out. I put it in a better movie. Then the other scene was, there was a sequence where Jay and Silent Bob, throughout the movie, were running around the fucking mall and shit. And one of the running gags in the first and second draft was they were constantly busting in on Gwen when she's trying on shit. And one of the times they were in a booth next to her, and there was a little hole in the wall, and they were peeking through it like Porky style. It was my homage to that great cinema epic Porky's. And Silent Bob starts jerking off, and he jerks off, and he shoots up in the air, and it comes over, and it lands in Gwen's hair. And she screams, and they go tearing ass out. And then the next time you see Gwen, when she meets up with T.S. and Brody, she still has it matted in her hair, and her hair looks all funky. And that was in the script, and they were like, that's not funny. No, my hand to God, this is a true story. That's not funny. Nobody will ever pay to see that. You will turn off an audience with cum in the hair type jokes. And so I said, all right, and I took it out. And then somebody else put it in their movie. They didn't take my idea. I think they kind of, great minds think alike. And they did it, and their movie made like $120 million. So I was always perturbed about that. But that was the only time during Mallrats. We were so new to the process. We just believed whatever we were told. Because we wanted to make the movie for $2 million. And they were like, no, it's going to be $6 million. We're like, why? $6 million? We don't have to make a movie for $6 million. We can make it for $2 million. It's small. It's a couple kids running around a fucking mall. It doesn't cost that much money. It's not like it has a rubber poop monster in it or something. And they said, you can't make a movie for less than $6 million. I said, we made a movie for only 28 grand. They're like, that's not a real movie now, is it? I should have known right there. And I sat there going, I guess you're right. I guess it's not. Maybe it'll be a cartoon one day.
What makes a joke work? Surprise. I think the answer is a simple little word. You're expecting something and you don't get it and you get something else. And it's thrilling, to be thrown off the horse.
Some of your critics have blamed you for contributing to the escalating cost. They say they now have to keep aiming for Spielberg-sized hits. Medium hits won't do. Valid?
Well, not really. I mean, it's not my cross to bear, because I can only make my movies, and little movies, big movies, whatever kind of movies I make, and I am not responsible for their, for the acceptance of those films and what happens after those films are released. I mean, everybody goes for a home run if they think they've got a shot at it.
Let me get you to react to something that one of your peers said, another director. Steven Spielberg can't be compared with people like Mike Nichols or Barry Levinson. There is a place for mass entertainment, but it shouldn't be confused with art or quality award-winning filmmaking.
Sometimes I think that statements like that are pretentious in themselves, because it sort of says that art is serious, and art can't move you. Art can't be on a bicycle with E.T. and fly across the moon. That can't be art, that because it takes your heart along with it through the sky, and it makes you feel like a kid again.
So we made the movie. Now the most interesting part of this, something I think is very funny, so Kim Jorgensen is the executive producer of Kentucky Fried Movie. Kentucky Fried Movie was a big hit, made a lot of money, so he became wealthy. And with his money, he bought the rights to his favorite book by Isaac Dens, I forgot the name, some famous Dutch writer. And he tried to make that movie for years and years and years, and then finally he got it made. So then he moved back to Holland. So Kim has only 2 credits. He's the executive producer of Kentucky Fried Movie, and he's the executive producer of Out of Africa.
I'm a big John Wayne fan. Yeah. Not only am I a big John Wayne fan, actually, it's funny because no one really ever gave him credit for acting and for being an actor. They give him credit for being a movie star, but it's funny when you look at acting in movies pre-Brando and post-Brando. Mm-hmm. All right, you have 2 different styles going on. Not the pre-Brando style, but you can kind of see the great actors were still the great actors, but you can see a level of work that you wouldn't accept nowadays.
Okay.
All right,
fair.
a level of acting. All right, you wouldn't see nowadays. where Brando brought naturalism more into it.
Before Brando, you could see the acting. After Brando, you couldn't see the acting.
Yeah, if they're good. Yeah, exactly. But even the mediocre actors now seem vastly superior, because at least they seem a little closer to real life.
Okay.
See, John Wayne was kind of doing that a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
You see, John Wayne, you never saw the acting. He was extremely realistic. He had an extremely naturalistic sense about him. When you look at him in Red River, or you look at him in Rio Bravo and everything, he's just like, in Rio Bravo, he's like charm personified. But like in Red River, you have, what's really fantastic is I'm a real big fan of character work. And people don't give John Wayne credit for being a character actor. But like, he had this character that he played, but he stretched it.
Right,
in every
exactly.
way you could stretch it. The character he played in The Searchers, this racist Indian killer, all right, he played that without any apologies. And the same thing with in Red River, where he grows older and older and becomes this mean fellow. But at the same time, he's acting opposite Montgomery Clift. All right, and one is not better than the other. I mean, John Wayne is so magnificent opposite Montgomery Clift. Yeah. All right, you wouldn't seem that they would be the same school, and actually the schools fit like this.
The average movie today is $25 million. The average film, I believe, about 6 years ago, it was $15 million. The multiplication table of what films are going to cost 10 years from now is going to mean that Hollywood will be out of control in that they won't be able to give audiences grand entertainment anymore. And instead, you're going to just have to settle for films that are a little low in calories. And there's nothing wrong with that, too, because maybe it'll bring back Tracy and Hepburn. Maybe it'll bring back writers like, Ruth Gordon and Garson Kanin. I mean, maybe it'll be a revolution, and the films will be smaller but much more provocative.
Can you do that kind of movie?
Yes, I can, if I find the right script and story, absolutely.
My relationship with death remains the same. I'm strongly against it, and,